Lettice was the first woman to fly a Lancaster, and she flew it on her own.
We lost 103 Lancasters and nearly 900 crew in one night, and that just signifies the amount of punishment that the German nation took at the hands of the Allies. And the RAF took off and flew over these areas at very low altitude and dropped what you can see are the parcels out of the aircraft.
So I'm Nikki van der Drift, and I'm the Chief Executive here at the International Bomber Command Centre.
How long has International Bomber Command Centre been here now in Lincoln?
So the Spire has been here nearly 10 years. It went up on the 10th of May 2015, but the centre itself only actually opened in January 18.
And what an amazing, there's a buzz about the place today, and I'm sure every day, yes?
Yes, absolutely.
A wonderful cafe and an awful lot of history here. And the big thing we're talking about at the moment is these ladies. Well, these are some of the ladies we're talking about. Tell us the significance of those, Nikki.
So women were the backbone of Britain during World War II, but their story isn't often told. And we've got 172 women named on our walls. And we felt it was right to actually tell their stories. And so we've picked 10 women. That was the hardest part of it all, which 10, because so many incredible stories. So what we've tried to do is capture people that covered different sectors, that supported in different ways. We've taken their photographs, and the teams with Standing from Giants have created these magnificent tributes here.
They're amazing.
They are. And so of course that team was the one that was responsible for the 20,000 silhouettes at Normandy last year for D-Day.
Oh, okay. And these particular ladies that we've chosen to stand in front of just for our shot here, their names are?
So this is Muriel Blake. Muriel was a parachute packer, absolutely vital. And if a guy's life was saved by parachute, the thing was that they would come back and they would give the girl that packed their parachute £1, because it was £1 for a life. Really key. Really key.
Wow.
So immensely important role. She suffered from back pain all her life from lifting those heavy parachutes and dinghies, which they also packed. But again, a story that not many people know.
Amazing. And then down the line?
So this is Lettice Curtis. Lettice was an ATA pilot, so that's an Air Transport Auxiliary pilot. And these women were amazing, and men, but mainly the women. They flew all sorts of aircraft and delivered them into operational arenas and stations. So Lettice was the first woman to fly a Lancaster, and she flew it on her own.
Wow, did she?
And she carried on flying until she was 83 when she grounded herself. And
83?
Yeah. She put herself through a helicopter licence in her late 60s. Amazing woman. And again, but the story is that there were many of these women, and their stories aren't told.
So amazing.
Yeah, amazing. And then beside her we have Dorothy Robson, who was known as Bomb Site Bertha, and she's actually remembered here on our walls. She was too short to join the WAFs, so she became a bomb site developer, and she was actually killed testing one of her bomb sites. She was also known as the girl with the laughing eyes.
Oh.
Yeah, which I think you can see here.
You can, yeah. Brilliantly captured.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And finally?
Finally, we have the indomitable Margaret Hurrigan, who was a plotter. So she was originally with Fighter Command and was then posted to Waddington with 50 and then 61 Squadron. So she would have been responsible for plane movements, aircraft movements. And she married an Australian officer and went to Australia, where she had 8 children. And for the 2018 opening ceremony in April that year, the Australian government funded 17 veterans and their support carers to come over, and Margaret was one of those 18. What a lady.
Wow.
Regaled us all with wonderful stories, and we've kept in close contact with the family ever since. Sadly, we lost Margaret last year at 101. But for the unveiling last weekend, her son flew in from Sydney and her daughter in from Rome.
Aww.
And they were here to witness the unveiling of these amazing silhouettes.
Absolutely amazing. Wow. What a story, Nikki.
It is. It's been such a joy to work on.
I bet it has. And just for people who maybe live locally or even further afield and never been here to this amazing site, what's on offer when people get here?
So first and foremost is the Spire. So the Spire is 102 foot or 31.09 metres tall. which is the wingspan of a Lancaster, so literally from wingtip to wingtip. And we chose the Spire because the view of the cathedral was massively important to those crews that served from Lincolnshire. And for 300 years, the cathedral was the tallest building in the world because of its spire.
Yes.
So,
Right.
hence the connection. And it's surrounded by these panels, these of names, and every life lost in the service of Bomber Command is here. This is the wartime ones. So you've got just under 58,000 young men and women named on these walls, average age of 23.
Incredible.
37 nations represented. And it's the only place in the world where every single loss is memorialised like this. So we have visitors from, I think so far, 58 different countries.
They come from all over to track their relatives?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or it may be that they're serving personnel in their own military now and they're coming to find their heritage. It's a hugely important part. So this is, I suppose, front and centre, but we then have the exhibition in which we can tell the story of Bomber Command. We have a huge education programme, 31,000 children through that so far since we opened. And then shop and cafe and all the facilities. I will say gold award-winning cafe. But what has happened is it's become a hub for communities. You'll see all ages in there, and it's a place where people gather.
Amazing. What an amazing place this is. And the visitor numbers are great.
They're all right.
They're all right.
580,000 since we opened. Wow. So a little bit more than we originally anticipated. But it's fantastic because what it means is that only 49% of our visitors have a connection with the RAF or Bomber Command.
Oh.
So that means that the sacrifice that is given here has become something that is important to a much wider audience. And that's really why we exist. It's about educating people on a story that wasn't told immediately after the war.
And that you'll struggle to get a better view of Lincoln than you have here as well.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
there's many pluses to a visit. Come and have a look. Thank you, Nikki.
Fantastic.
Dave, something, well, hopefully wonderful is about to happen because you've got a story to tell about a relative that you found out recently, right?
Quite incredibly, yes. We knew we were coming here with you, and I received a telephone call from my wife's sister-in-law up in Yorkshire to say that they were carrying out some family records and family history investigation, and they came across a great uncle that nobody had really known about or had been forgotten about, named Gordon Elmy. My wife's surname was Elmy.
Okay.
And it transpired that he joined the RAF in 1941 as a bomber pilot, and he flew Lancasters.
Wow.
And first I'd heard of this. I'd been married 50 years and the conversation had never come up. And what was incredible was that the resources that I'm able to get hold of, we managed to get hold of the whole story built round him. And it took a couple of weeks of going into the archives, etc. And we just realised what a hero this guy was. I mean, they were all heroes, there's no doubt about it, but to have a family hero, it was something special. And it transpired that he'd transferred from his operational squadrons to 156 Squadron, which is a very special squadron within the RAF, because it was Pathfinders.
Okay.
And they flew out of a base called RAF Upwood.
For people who don't know, Pathfinders did what?
Pathfinders were the best of the best. They were the ones that led the formations of bombers into occupied territory. They went a few minutes ahead of the main force, and they dropped the flares, pinpointing exactly where everybody else should bomb. And they were revered through Bomber Command. In fact, they had their own badge that they could wear on the sleeve of their uniform. And instead of having to fly 30 missions to complete a tour, Pathfinders had to fly 40. So it just shows you the intensity by which they were employed. And on this particular night, 80 years ago next week, on the 31st of March, he took off for his 4th mission as a Pathfinder to fly to Nuremberg as one of the lead aircraft. This raid has become infamous within RAF history. It was the raid where we lost the biggest number of personnel in one night. To give you some idea, we lost 103 Lancasters and nearly 900 crew.
Wow.
Were lost in one night. The whole mission was a disaster. They got the weather wrong. The Luftwaffe knew they were coming. They'd plotted the routes. They were there waiting for them. They'd withdrawn forces from other areas to meet this bomber force, and they decimated it. And my wife's relative, as was Gordon, was shot down just by Dortmund on the way into the raid, and it was buried in Germany, a military cemetery in Germany. And we knew nothing of this, so we were able to go and investigate, and it then transpired that through some further sort of emails, etc., we found that his name's here on the plaques.
That's an amazing story,
at the
Dave.
International Bomber Command Centre.
Wow.
Somewhere where I've been involved with since it opened in 2015 when we got involved with this place.
Quite,
So it's
quite the story. You've been here many times and you've
never. And we're about now for the first time to go find his name, and to just remember him for a second, and just to lay a poppy next to his name, which I think, considering that the family knew nothing of him, he just faded into history and nobody remembered him. And from now on, he will be remembered in our family.
Let's go and find him, Dave.
There we go.
Incredible, Dave. You feel okay?
I do. Yeah, it's
Proud.
quite touching. But
Yeah.
having been involved with this centre since really its inception, to find somebody that's
Incredible.
related to us just in the last couple of weeks, it's been quite incredible.
Wow. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. We're inside the exhibition hall now within the International Bomber Command Centre. Very poignant room. There's a lot of stories in here that are very individual and very personal, and that's the way they wanted to tell the story of Bomber Command. They felt that rather overarching stories, individual stories were better. You may be able to hear in the background here that they always play on a loop a raid going into Germany where the pilot of a Lancaster is interacting with his crew. They're being intercepted by a German fighter aircraft, the report hitting it and shooting it down, and the elation that they feel in defeating an enemy that was coming against them. You know, you get all that from inside this room. Behind us is probably the centrepiece really of the exhibition, and this is a map of Europe, and what it depicts are all the raids carried out from 1939 to 1945 in Europe, both German and Allied. And what you notice here is that at the beginning of the war, you'll see Britain covered in red dots as it's been pulverised during the Blitz and afterwards, and the Battle of Britain, of course. But later on, going into 1941, 42, 43, more and more blue dots are appearing now, both over France, the Low Countries, but especially Germany. And we start to see them concentrated around the Ruhr, where they're attacking the German industrial complex. And then as the bombers get bigger, and we get better aircraft and more protection, you start to see the raids coming in until the area around Germany is almost totally blue. And that just signifies the amount of punishment that the German nation took at the hands of the Allies. Part of this centre is not just remembering Bomber Command, but it's also about reconciliation, about how the individual German felt as being just a civilian, in the suffering that they went through with regards to the bombing, the destruction of their cities, etc. Of course, they weren't political, they were just the victims like everybody else in warfare. And the IBCC is very keen to show both sides of the story, which is what they do very well here.
Dave, here we are, and there's quite a story goes along with this particular monument here.
There is. I mean, what a wonderful story this is. You know, it's a bit of humanity in the depths of despair during World War II. By late 1944, the Allies were pushing up through the Belgium and the Netherlands, and the Dutch people thought that the whole country was going to be liberated soon. And to that extent that in the north of the country, the people running the railways went on strike and refused to move any of the logistics that the Germans wanted. In retaliation to this, the Germans cut off that part of the country, closed the roads down, everything. There was no transport movement. They stopped all food supplies into that area, and very soon that part of the nation was actually starving, and they needed rescuing. To that point, this was happening mid-March to late March 1945. But to that point, it was obvious that a rescue plan had to be put into operation. And to that extent, the American and British forces met with the German forces in Switzerland through the ambassador's office. They came to an agreement that the RAF and the Americans would be prepared to drop food supplies to the starving population on the understanding that their aircraft would not be shot at. The Germans finally agreed to this, and certain drop points were set up around the country. The RAF would drop in certain areas and the American Air Force in the others. The British operation would be known as Operation Manna, and the Americans Operation Chowhound. And the first idea was to start collecting the food logistically from around the UK, ready to distribute it via the aircraft that you can see here. And the area chosen was Foldingworth, just outside Lincoln, where massive food supplies were brought in from an already starving population. You got to remember, we weren't particularly being well fed at the time, to the extent that the RAF regiment had to guard the area in case anybody broke in and attempted to steal it, which I've never read any reports that they did, but obviously they thought it was a potential problem. Once the drops began, the Germans laid out specific areas on fields which were marked out with blankets or paint, and the RAF took off and flew over these areas at very low altitude and dropped what you can see are the parcels out of the aircraft containing everything that needed: flour, potatoes, meat, anything that the population needed.
Saving lives.
Saving lives. Now, what was all at the first part of the operation, both the Germans and the British were very cagey with each other. The Germans followed the aircraft with their guns, anti-aircraft guns, just in case it was a ruse to drop bombs on them. And the RAF crews were told not to be trigger happy in returning any fire that may come up. And as far as we know, everything went smoothly. This operation lasted a couple of weeks and everything went smoothly with no major incidents. What this monument depicts, as you can see here, there are some famous photographs taken on the ground in Holland depicting women and children waving their handkerchiefs, etc. And they were always orange. The House of Orange, of course, was the national colour, so you would see them waving anything orange to the air crews as they flew over. I've personally chatted to several aircrew who took part in this operation, and they said that after 3 years of fighting a war, these were the happiest missions they ever went on, the fact that they were saving people on the ground. And this became known as the first airlifted humanitarian operation in history.
Wow.
And from that, it's commemorated here.
So if you're arriving here at International Bomber Command and this is just something you might just walk past, this is the story of it, make sure you pay attention to it.